I've got an image here that I love, but I'm going to take a look and see how Camera Raw can make a good shot even better. It was taken with an iPhone, and I'm still astounded by that. But I'll choose File, Open in Camera Raw through Adobe Bridge. I'll up the exposure to open up more tones, but I have to be cautious. I am losing some highlight detail down here. This will show me a clipping warning. So I try to get the brightness where I'd like it overall, but I can protect those delicate highlights right here. I can make the shadows a bit darker because I really want this car seat to not be part of the image. Use your own judgment and preference here. You can play with your whites, but going too bright is losing all of this detail. And if you find this warning distracting, I can click here to turn it back off. Now, I'm going to protect the whites, but I want to open up a little bit more of her face. So I see brighter in this area without destroying the delicate faux fur of the coat. So I will click the adjustment brush. And with the adjustment brush, there are far more adjustments in PhotoshopCS6 that you could now make that you couldn't do in CS5 and earlier versions of Camera Raw. PhotoshopCS6 ships with ACR, Adobe Camera Raw 7. As I look at this, I scrolled to the bottom so I could see the size of the brush that you could dial down, but I could also use my Photoshop keys, right bracket for bigger brush, left bracket for smaller brush. And as I paint over her face, I always keep this feathered so that it's blended. I can scroll back up and adjust the exposure to make it darker, a little scary, or brighter for just the individual face, not really harming that coat. Now, a trick that I like to use is I tend to go too far at first and then erase the corrections. When I choose Erase, you'll notice I got a hard edge brush, so I'll hit Command-Z or Control-Z to undo and make sure my feather is all the way up, or pretty high at the least. So now that I've got a good feather, I can safely use Erase so it's mostly affecting just the face. Then I could scroll back up, and if you have high enough resolution, you won't need to scroll up and down the entire time. But I could make the exposure more subtle and also experiment with my highlights, with my shadows, with the clarity. Clarity gives it kind of that angelic glow to the left and more detail to the right. And I think I'm happy with this. I was on Erase. If this portion looks a little dark, I can go back to Add and add a correction. Now everything is good, but I could do further adjustments. I'll zoom in with Command plus or Control plus, and often in the eye color, it gets artificially darkened. So I'll make a new adjustment and scroll down and make the size about the size of her eye. In fact, I love to use my left bracket and right bracket on my keyboard to make them bigger or smaller. And now this is a second selective painted in adjustment where I can scroll up and really see the baby blue there in her eye color. I could even go too far with contrast and clarity because it's not touching her skin tone. So if I turn preview off and on, before, flat, a little boring, and you can't see all the details of her face. After, look at how that popped. I'll zoom back down to get an overall look at the shot. Before, after. Zoom in with Command plus or Control plus. Before, after. Very cool. I'll go back to the hand tool if I want to make an overall adjustment, and this coat is looking a little bit blue, so I'll slide just slightly away from blue towards yellow, And I can warm it up with a little bit of magenta. I'll turn my preview off and on to see if I like where I've come. If I decide the face is too dark, I could come back to the adjustment brush. And I happen to know I started painting around her nose, so I can target this correction and dial the exposure down just a bit. There's a more natural adjustment. So I will hit Done and take a look in my workspace because I've got a better view of my corrected version. In fact, I'll name this image and I'll save a corrected version of it. I'll double-click and hit Open Image, and now do a Save As, and I'll put it in that folder so you guys can see the ending version. Now this has already been corrected, and if I want to compare them side by side, I can hit Command-Tab or Alt-Tab to go back to the Bridge application, name this Begin, how I name most of the assets, and I'll clear out everything I did in Camera Raw. Commonly, I'll make a backup of this file because I don't want to lose the work I just did, but that's the beauty of Camera Raw. You could undo it and no pixels were harmed in the correction of this photo. So Edit, Develop Settings, Clear. Here's pure data, unretouched from the iPhone. Here are painted-in adjustments to see the detail in the face and really see that eye color. I didn't change the eye color. I only opened up the midtones as if we had perfect studio lighting. The lighting temperature of outside at noon facing north on a clear day. That rarely happens in my own personal shots that I have great lighting. So Photoshop and Camera Raw are the tools I live by to get exactly what I saw on that day and the beauty I want or the composition I want out of any photo. Give the adjustment brush a try on a few of your own images.